I didn't know racism until I went to Greenwich. That was the first time I ever heard the N-word, and I repeated the N-word once, and the only time in his life that my dad.
I didn't know racism until I went to Greenwich. That was the first time I ever heard the N-word. And I repeated the N-word once. And the only time in his life that my dad whacked me across the face, he said, "Don't you ever say that word again." Jane Fonda confessed at 87. But some actors were just unbearable. In a jaw-dropping revelation, the two-time Oscar winner finally named the 5 actors she hated most, calling them misogynistic, arrogant, and impossible to work with. Fonda didn't flinch as she exposed the behind-the-scenes chaos, ego battles, and on-set cruelty. The names on her list will leave you speechless. Robert Redford. Jane Fonda's storied career spans decades of powerful performances, bold activism, and deep introspection. Yet, among the many figures who've accompanied her on screen, Robert Redford holds a unique and complicated place. Speaking candidly in interviews, the legendary actress has offered revealing insights into her decades-long working relationship with Redford, her co-star in 4 films over the span of more than 50 years. While their chemistry on screen seemed effortless and intimate, Fonda's reflections hint at a far more nuanced dynamic behind the scenes. Their cinematic partnership began in 1966 with The Chase, a tense drama directed by Arthur Penn. It was their first time sharing the screen, and it laid the groundwork for what would become one of Hollywood's most iconic on-screen pairings. A year later, they solidified their reputation as an electric duo in Barefoot in the Park, a romantic comedy that showcased their playful rapport and compelling presence. The audience fell in love with the couple, unaware of the subtle emotional and interpersonal tension simmering beneath the surface. They reunited in The Electric Horseman in 1979, this time older and more seasoned, playing characters navigating both romantic and existential challenges. Nearly 4 decades later in 2017, they came together once more for Our Souls at Night, a Netflix drama about 2 widowed neighbors finding unexpected companionship in their twilight years. But it was during the filming of this final collaboration that Fonda experienced a major shift in how she viewed her longtime co-star. One of the most striking aspects of Fonda's recollections is her frankness about Redford's temperament. "He was always in a bad mood," she said, noting that his persistent moodiness often made her feel as if she had done something wrong. For years, she internalized his emotional distance and prickliness as a personal failure, something she needed to fix or navigate. However, that perception underwent a profound transformation as she aged. By the time she was around 80 and filming Our Souls at Night, Fonda had a realization. Redford's moods were not her responsibility. This insight was more than a professional observation. It was an important marker of personal growth. "I realized it wasn't about me," she explained with the kind of clarity that often comes only after a lifetime of emotional labor. The recognition freed her both personally and professionally to engage with Redford differently. It was a moment of emancipation from the emotional caretaking roles that women, especially actresses in a male-dominated industry, are often conditioned to adopt. Despite the tensions and emotional misreadings, Fonda emphasizes that they always managed to enjoy their time on set. There was still laughter, still admiration, still mutual respect. But those experiences existed alongside something else, an unspoken emotional distance that she could never quite cross. One of the more surprising elements of Fonda's revelations involves Redford's attitude toward intimacy on screen. Though they frequently played romantic partners, Redford, she revealed, did not like kissing scenes. This was particularly jarring given the romantic appeal of their characters in films like Barefoot in the Park. Fonda noted that she never addressed this quirk with him directly, choosing instead to accommodate the boundary in silence. The reluctance added an invisible barrier in scenes that otherwise suggested deep emotional vulnerability and connection. Perhaps the most enigmatic of Fonda's comments about Redford came when she remarked, "He has an issue with women." She did not elaborate, and the comment stands as a kind of unfinished sentence, an opening to a deeper, more complicated story that she has chosen not to fully tell. It suggests that behind Redford's image as the golden boy of American cinema lies a more conflicted relationship with femininity and emotional openness. Whether that issue referred to emotional intimacy, professional power dynamics, or personal insecurity remains a mystery. But the implication is that Fonda, with all her insight and empathy, felt the impact of it across their collaborations. Even with all of this, Fonda speaks of Redford with affection and care. She's careful to note his goodness. "He's a very good person," she says, a phrase that carries both admiration and a hint of disappointment. She also confesses with endearing honesty that she was in love with him during the filming of 3 of their 4 movies together. That love, unfulfilled or unspoken, perhaps made their on-screen intimacy more believable, even as it complicated her off-screen experience. Their final film, Our Souls at Night, serves as a kind of quiet coda to their professional and emotional journey together. 2 older characters finding comfort and connection after a lifetime of emotional avoidance. It's hard not to see the parallel between the roles and the real-life relationship that played out behind the scenes. For Fonda, that last collaboration wasn't just another movie. It was the culmination of 5 decades of complex feelings, professional admiration, romantic affection, emotional frustration, and finally acceptance. In speaking so openly about Redford, Fonda does what she has done throughout her life and career: tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Her reflections add depth to a screen partnership many considered ideal. And in doing so, she reclaims her voice in a narrative that for decades seemed only to exist in the glow of romanticized cinema. The real story, it turns out, was much richer and far more human. Lily Tomlin. Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, 2 titans of American entertainment, have shared one of Hollywood's most enduring and meaningful friendships. Though their paths were forged in different fires, Fonda, the daughter of film legend Henry Fonda, raised in the privileged glow of Hollywood aristocracy, and Tomlin, the sharp-tongued comic who grew up tough in working-class Detroit, their connection has only deepened across decades of collaboration, activism, and mutual admiration. Their first meeting was serendipitous and sparked the beginning of something remarkable. It was 1977, and Fonda had attended a performance of Appearing Nightly, Tomlin's one-woman comedy show at the Armanson Theatre in Los Angeles. Fonda had already made her mark with films like Clute, 1971, which earned her an Academy Award, and had become increasingly involved in producing socially conscious work. Tomlin, meanwhile, was gaining acclaim for her biting wit and transformative character work on stage and television. After the show, Fonda went backstage to meet Tomlin, and what began as a fan's appreciation quickly turned into a professional revelation. Fonda was in the early stages of developing a film about working women, an idea that would become the now classic 9 to 5. She was so struck by Tomlin's performance that night and by her presence that she made an immediate decision. The film would only go forward if Tomlin agreed to be part of the cast. That level of instant trust and creative faith is rare in show business. It signaled the beginning of a partnership built not only on talent but on something deeper: recognition. 9 to 5, released in 1980, would become a cultural touchstone. Alongside Dolly Parton, Fonda and Tomlin played 3 working women who take revenge on their sexist, egotistical boss. The film was as hilarious as it was revolutionary, tackling workplace harassment and gender inequality with sharp satire. But more importantly, it was the project that cemented Fonda and Tomlin's friendship. Despite their vastly different upbringings, the 2 women found common ground easily. As Fonda would later reflect, they discovered they shared a similar sense of humor, a no-nonsense approach to life, and a deep awareness of the challenges faced by women in a male-dominated industry. Tomlin's rough-edged comic style and sharp intellect complemented Fonda's fierce determination and emotional openness. Over time, their connection grew more intimate, grounded in respect, and sustained by a willingness to both challenge and support one another. In 1981, their dynamic was on display again when Fonda and Dolly Parton made cameo appearances in Tomlin's CBS variety special, Lily Sold Out, which went on to win an Emmy for Outstanding Variety, Music, or Comedy Program. It was a playful yet powerful reminder that their bond extended beyond any single project. They were collaborators in spirit. Later in 1986, the 2 were seen attending a screening of The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe. The documentary of Tomlin's legendary Broadway show further reinforced how deeply involved they remained in each other's artistic worlds. Their friendship took a transformative turn decades later when they reunited on screen as co-leads in the Netflix original series Grace and Frankie. Debuting in 2015, the series followed 2 women, one reserved and traditional, the other bold and eccentric, who are forced into an unexpected friendship after their husbands leave them for each other. Fonda played the tightly wound Grace, while Tomlin portrayed the free-spirited Frankie. The show became a hit, running for 7 seasons and becoming one of Netflix's longest-run series. But beyond the accolades, Grace and Frankie brought Fonda and Tomlin even closer. Fonda has spoken openly about how working on the show allowed her to feel emotionally safe, a rarity in a business where vulnerability can often feel risky. "I feel safe with her," Fonda said of Tomlin. "She makes me laugh. She grounds me. She challenges me." It was clear that their fictional dynamic reflected a very real emotional truth. Two women, radically different, becoming more complete because of each other. Even after the show concluded, their collaboration didn't slow down. Fonda and Tomlin went on to co-star in 2 more films, continuing to bring their unique chemistry to the screen. Their work often intertwines with their activism. And while they don't spend much time together socially when not working, they frequently appear side by side at fundraisers, social justice rallies, and events for causes they support, from climate change to women's rights. Fonda has often praised Tomlin's tough exterior and biting humor, noting how it disguises a deep well of emotion and empathy. "She has a barbed wire tongue, but her characters have so much soul," Fonda once said. She deeply admires Tomlin's ability to straddle satire and sincerity, always staying grounded in truth. In turn, Tomlin has spoken with admiration about Fonda's passion, discipline, and vulnerability, qualities that have made her not only an icon, but a beloved friend. In an industry where friendships can be fleeting and careers are often isolating, the connection between Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin stands out. It has evolved, deepened, and endured through decades of change, personal growth, and shared purpose. Whether on stage, screen, or the front lines of protest, they are partners in a rare and powerful kind of friendship, one that defies stereotypes, transcends industry norms, and continues to inspire. In the unpredictable world of film, some of the most memorable moments aren't written in the script. They're the result of chance, timing, and a bit of human resilience. Such was the case for Jane Fonda and Richard Roundtree, who shared a surprisingly tender and humorous on-screen romance in the 2022 dark comedy Moving On. Though the film itself centers on grief, revenge, and late-life reckoning, it was a single kissing scene between the 2 legendary actors that added an unexpected and amusing chapter to their long Hollywood journeys. In Moving On, Fonda and Roundtree play ex-spouses who reconnect at the funeral of a mutual friend. Their characters' shared history is complicated, filled with the kind of unresolved tension that only decades of separation can bring. As the story unfolds, they rediscover a kind of affection that has been lying dormant beneath the layers of regret and unspoken emotion. The culmination of that emotional thread arrives in the form of a passionate make-out scene. An unusual sight in cinema, not only because of the character's age, but also because it involves 2 actors whose romantic paths had never crossed on screen before. Fonda, an Oscar-winning actress known for her work in everything from Clute to Grace and Frankie, and Roundtree, whose portrayal of private detective John Shaft in the 1971 film Shaft turned him into an icon of cool, were an unlikely but deeply compelling pair. Their chemistry was genuine and layered, revealing both vulnerability and humor in a film that balanced serious themes with absurdity. But when it came time to film the intimate kissing scene, life threw them a curveball. Fonda unfortunately came down with a miserable cold on the very day the kiss was scheduled to be shot. Congested, achy, and barely able to breathe through her nose, she pressed on with the day's filming, but with one notable exception. According to director Paul Weitz, Fonda's illness meant they shot everything around the kiss, dialogue, reactions, positioning, everything but the actual smooch. Rather than force the moment in less than ideal conditions, Weitz and the production team decided to delay the close-up of the kiss until Fonda had recovered. Roundtree was called back to set at a later date. And this time, there was only one reason for the shoot: to kiss Jane Fonda. The idea of bringing someone back to set just to kiss a co-star may seem extravagant. But for seasoned professionals like Fonda and Roundtree, it was just part of the business, and a particularly amusing one at that. Fonda, always game and infused with a healthy sense of humor, was delighted by the situation. Despite being in her 80s and an undisputed legend of the screen, she approached the moment with the same enthusiasm she brought to all her roles. Her illness may have temporarily sidelined the kiss, but her determination never faltered. For Roundtree, the scene was both fun and surprising. While he's known primarily for roles that exude confidence and toughness, this quieter, more romantic beat in Moving On gave him a new kind of spotlight. He and Fonda, though stylistically different in their performances, shared a comfort and mutual respect that made the scene work when it was finally filmed. So much so that it became a quiet highlight of the film's emotional arc. The humor wasn't lost on the crew either. As Weitz recalled in interviews, the entire situation, rescheduling a shoot for a single kiss between two veteran actors, was both touching and hilarious. There's something unexpectedly beautiful about two people well into the later chapters of their careers treating an intimate scene with the same care and enthusiasm as if it were their first. It's a reminder that stories about love and connection aren't limited to youth and that vulnerability, even in comedy, can leave a lasting impact. Fonda herself has long championed roles that defy ageist conventions, and this scene fit right into her broader mission of portraying complex, vibrant older women on screen. The kiss with Roundtree wasn't gratuitous or comedic in the slapstick sense. It was honest, earned, and delicately poignant, capturing a moment of emotional risk between two people who had lived full lives and were still willing to open their hearts. Tragically, Richard Roundtree passed away in October 2023, just over a year after Moving On premiered. His final years saw a quiet resurgence in his career, and his performance in this film stands as a testament to his range and his generosity as an actor. For Fonda, who mourned the loss of her friend and co-star, the scene now carries additional emotional weight. What was once a playful anecdote about a rescheduled kiss has become a cherished memory, an on-screen moment that captured a fleeting spark between two icons who had never worked together before but found something meaningful in their brief cinematic connection. In a revealing and unsparingly honest moment during a Cannes interview, Jane Fonda, never one to shy away from saying exactly what she thinks, offered a sharp and thoughtful reflection on the difference between artistic brilliance and personal behavior. The subject was Jean-Luc Godard, the iconoclastic French director and a central figure in the revolutionary Nouvelle Vague, French New Wave, movement. Fonda, who worked with Godard on the 1972 film Tout va bien, spoke of him with a complex mix of admiration and disapproval. Her words were pointed. "He was a great filmmaker," she said plainly. "But as a man, I'm sorry. No. The contrast couldn't have been starker, and that was precisely her point. In an industry that often conflates genius with virtue, Fonda separated the two with characteristic clarity. Her critique wasn't delivered with rage or resentment, but with the calm authority of someone who has spent a lifetime navigating powerful men and difficult working relationships. She acknowledged Godard's contributions to cinema without flinching at what she saw as his failings as a human being. Fonda's relationship with Godard had always been enigmatic. When she agreed to star in Tout va bien, she was at the height of both her acting career and her activism. The early 1970s were a period of transformation for her, politically charged, professionally bold, and personally tumultuous. Godard, too, was in a phase of ideological fervor, turning away from narrative filmmaking and diving deep into Marxist critiques of capitalism and consumerism. Their collaboration was meant to be a convergence of two radical spirits, each pushing against the grain of their respective industries. But while their intellectual goals may have aligned on paper, the actual experience of working together was something else entirely. Fonda has alluded in past interviews to the frustrations of the production, describing the process as chaotic, opaque, and at times dehumanizing. Godard's directing style, especially during this political phase, often favored ideology over individuals. Actors weren't necessarily collaborators, they were vessels through which his ideas flowed, sometimes treated more like symbols than people. For an actress like Fonda, who brought intense emotional commitment and political consciousness to her work, this could feel cold and dismissive. In her Cannes comments, she didn't elaborate on specific incidents, but her tone made clear that her disappointment wasn't about a single moment or disagreement. It was about character. "As a man, I'm sorry, no," she repeated the words, deliberate and weighted. This wasn't a condemnation rooted in anger, but rather one grounded in principle. It was her way of saying that artistic brilliance does not excuse poor behavior, arrogance, or emotional neglect. It was also a quiet challenge to the persistent myth that great art can only be made by difficult, tortured men. What makes Fonda's remarks so compelling is the balance they strike. She did not attempt to erase or downplay Godard's cinematic influence. She called him a great filmmaker, and she meant it. Godard's early films like Breathless and Pierrot Le Fou were groundbreaking, bold, non-linear, stylish, and political in ways that had never been seen before. His use of jump cuts, his disregard for classical Hollywood structure, and his playful yet pointed take on visual language altered the course of global cinema. Fonda was part of that legacy, and she wasn't interested in revising it. But her comment also served as a larger meditation on power and personality in the arts. She didn't pretend that talent makes someone kind or that acclaim should shield someone from criticism. Her evaluation was a reminder that legacy is complicated and that we can hold two truths at once. Someone can be brilliant and deeply flawed. Someone can make great films and still be, in Fonda's eyes, not a good man. In many ways, this distinction reflects Fonda's evolution as an artist and a woman. Throughout her career, she's worked with, and often challenged, men who held immense power in the industry. She has moved through decades of change, both within herself and within the culture at large, growing into someone who speaks with precision and moral clarity about the forces that shape her world. Her criticism of Godard wasn't about settling old scores. It was about holding a mirror up to an industry that still struggles to reconcile genius with decency. Fonda's words may have been brief, but they carried the weight of experience. A great filmmaker. But as a man? No. In that pause, that division between the two ideas, she left space for reflection, for the audience to consider how often we excuse character in the name of creativity, how often we conflate authority with excellence. Jane Fonda also offered candid reflections on her experience working on the 1981 film On Golden Pond. She has often described it as one of the most meaningful and complex chapters of her professional life. The film brought together three legendary actors, Fonda herself, her father Henry Fonda, and the inimitable Katharine Hepburn. On the surface, it was a dream project, a poignant story of reconciliation, aging, and unspoken love. But behind the scenes, there was an undercurrent of tension, particularly between Jane Fonda and Hepburn, an emotional friction that Fonda has acknowledged with characteristic candor and restraint. It was glorious, but she didn't like me, Fonda has said in interviews, distilling an emotionally charged working relationship into one of her most diplomatically honest statements. She neither condemned Hepburn nor dismissed the artistic triumph of the film. Instead, she offered a nuanced portrait of two strong, accomplished women navigating a shared space in an industry that has rarely made room for more than one female force at a time. On Golden Pond was more than just another film for Jane Fonda. It was a deeply personal venture. She purchased the rights to the play with the express purpose of casting her father, Henry Fonda, in a role that mirrored elements of their real-life estrangement. Playing the daughter of an emotionally distant father, Jane hoped the film would not only showcase her father's talents one last time, he was gravely ill during the shoot, but also offer a kind of personal closure between them. It would ultimately do both. Henry Fonda won his first and only Academy Award for Best Actor for the role, and Jane has often spoken of how the experience brought them closer in his final year of life. Amidst this highly personal endeavor, Jane also found herself working alongside Katharine Hepburn, one of the most respected and formidable actresses in Hollywood history. Hepburn played Ethel Thayer, the sharp-tongued, loving wife to Henry's curmudgeonly Norman. She was fiercely protective of her co-star, whom she admired greatly and who was clearly in declining health during the shoot. That protectiveness, Fonda has suggested, extended into a kind of wariness toward Jane. The friction wasn't explosive. It wasn't the stuff of on-set screaming matches or open hostilities. Instead, it simmered beneath the surface. Hepburn, by her own admission in interviews, was unimpressed by what she viewed as Jane's Hollywood royalty status and the political noise that came with it. Hepburn was famously disciplined, private, and traditional in her views on acting as a craft. Fonda at the time was still seen by many as a controversial figure, an outspoken activist, a media lightning rod, and someone who had not risen through the ranks in the same old-school way. Fonda has never contested that Hepburn was difficult with her. In fact, she has spoken with a mixture of respect and amusement about their dynamic. She was a pro, Fonda said. She showed up. She did the work, but she made it very clear I wasn't her favorite person. Hepburn, in turn, famously told Fonda that she admired her athleticism but didn't think much of her acting. It was a classic Hepburn backhanded compliment, cutting and unsentimental, but not devoid of an odd kind of respect. What makes Jane's recollections especially compelling is the absence of bitterness. She doesn't rewrite the story to suit ego or defensiveness. Instead, she recognizes the complexity of the experience. It was glorious, she insists, and she means it. Working with Hepburn and her father on a film that would come to symbolize healing and generational change was indeed glorious, even if it came wrapped in subtle discomfort. Fonda has also acknowledged that over time, she came to appreciate the veiled lessons Hepburn offered. Hepburn's unwavering commitment to craft, her strict discipline, and her unshakable sense of self all left a lasting impression. In many ways, she became a symbol of an older generation of actresses who demanded excellence and accepted no compromise. Though she may not have extended warmth, she demonstrated a kind of integrity that Fonda ultimately respected. Perhaps one of the most telling reflections came years later when Fonda admitted that she had wanted Hepburn's approval and never really got it. It's a rare and vulnerable admission from someone who has earned global acclaim and built a career on breaking molds. Wanting to be liked, to be accepted by a peer and a legend, even when you yourself are a legend, that's a profoundly human response. Yet Fonda has never allowed that unreciprocated admiration to taint her view of the work they did together. In fact, the tension between them arguably added depth to their scenes. In On Golden Pond, Ethel and Chelsea, the characters played by Hepburn and Fonda share moments of awkward connection and subtle disapproval, affection laced with judgment. Life and art, as they often do in great cinema, intertwined in ways that could not be scripted. What do you think about the 5 actors that Jane Fonda hates the most? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.